Let's go to our political analyst and professor at Curtin University, Joe Siracusa. Joe, big meeting overnight. Antony Blinken, he's gone to Beijing. He's called talks constructive so far. What does that actually mean? Because is anything going to come out of this?
Good morning, Pete. Well, he used the word constructive the way a marriage counselor talks about a broken marriage. That they met together. They just met in the same room. They're trying to avert war. I mean, there's talk about reconstructing or putting together the communication system, talk about the economic problems or mending things. But mainly they're trying to avert war. And you know, we got war drums going on in Congress. I mean, Republicans and Democrats are spoiling for a fight. They're putting pressure on him. And poor Tony Blinken, you know, he's trying to avert a war. And at the same time, the Republicans are saying that his going over there by itself is appeasement, which is not, of course. He's trying to do the best he can. And the Chinese they're very realistic, or they're very pragmatic about foreign policy, and they're kind of looking over Blinken's shoulder because they know that President Trump is coming up the rear, and that President Biden might not be there in a year, so they get to play with new people, and they're kind of feeling them out. But mainly, they're trying to avert war over one thing, and that is Taiwan. The Chinese are going to make it very clear to Blinken, as in fact President Nixon and Henry Kissinger made clear many, many years ago, that Taiwan belongs to China, and no one's going to go to war over it. And they want to make sure there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you brought up Trump, you know, saying that they're looking over Blinken's shoulder, because, I mean, we know how Trump's going to be, because, I mean, this all flared up last time he was president. So would they be more or less worried about a potential President Trump 2.0?
No, they're not worried about Trump. Trump gave him some trouble economically. Trump was a little sticky with them about patents and things like that. But Trump is a realist. I like to say that the founding fathers, who were also realists, would have regarded Donald Trump as one of their own. Trump plays the balance of power. You know, he tries to shift things around, and I think they'd probably get along with him very well, as a matter of fact. But look, Pete, I want to say something. Over the weekend, all the mainstream media was praising this guy, Daniel Ellsberg, you know, who stole 7,000 documents, and he was up for treason and espionage act. And of course, the judge, after 15 months, threw it out of court because he said all the evidence was dodgy, and he was bribed by President Nixon to become director of the FBI. So, in the first story, they talk about Ellsberg, this great hero who stopped the war in Vietnam. He didn't, as a matter of fact, and he stole 7,000 documents. And then the next sentence, or next story, is President Trump. They want to send him to jail for 100 years for one document. So, you know, I sort of enjoyed the discomfiture of the mainstream press. But look, this all goes back to realistic type people. And I think the Biden administration, in terms of its pursuit of human rights-led foreign policy, in terms of its idealism, in terms of its kind of State Department wokeness, has missed the point. You know, 2/3 of the world doesn't give a damn about sanctions, and they're prepared to watch what happens in Ukraine and the rest of it. I mean, the United States is trying to catch up with the world, and Blinken's running around just trying to keep the Chinese from going nuts about Taiwan. I mean, all we got to do is just stay back a little bit and let it do the thing.
So, I mean, when China's not going to change its position, America's not going to change its position, and it seems like, you know, the point for Antony Blinken's trip to Beijing is just don't make things worse. Then it can be called a success. What's the point of his trip even?
Probably not at all. In fact, there are many people in Washington who think it's a waste of time. We haven't had a Secretary of State there in 5 years since Mike Pompeo, which ain't saying much.
And I mean, that's significant in itself, isn't it? Because there's been so much time between drinks.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That was a joke about the marriage counselor. It's been a long time between sessions.
It was a good joke, I got to say.
Matter of fact, yes. And look, I also want to say I was born 3 months early, and I turned out all right, too. So I like your story there about people who are catching up with their education. I was in one of those little damn cribs for 3 months before I got out of the hospital. So
my son.
But look, the world is still there. And what I thought was important over the last. Go ahead.
You were born 3 months early, Joe.
I thought it was important over the last days, as President Putin says, We've got nuclear weapons now in Belarus, and President Biden yesterday says what? He says he's not going to fast track Ukraine into NATO. So they're actually talking to each other in terms of nuclear weapons and in terms of NATO admission. So I think Biden's got the idea that we're not going to go to war. We're not going to put troops into Ukraine, and Putin has simply delivered the hard message to the Americans. If you want to go into Ukraine, if NATO wants to go into Ukraine, you're going to be looking at tactical nuclear warfare, which, by the way, can be fought and can be won.
All right. Oh, you're born 3 months early, Joe. 3 months.
I haven't, and it's worse than that. It's worse than that. I had a twin brother. I got a twin brother out there somewhere. He's out there somewhere.
All right. But, that doesn't... You're one of my favourite chats of the week and have been for several years, Joe Siracusa. So that's done nothing to harm your intelligence. So I put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Joe Siracusa.